right.
Yep.
We're live.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, hi, LuAnn.
Hello.
Make
Glad
sure
to
the
be
mic's
with you
on.
tonight.
Yes, me too.
Yeah.
So I think like last time, while we're waiting for folks, we should probably introduce ourselves.
Sounds good.
We've got at least one person on. I don't know who that is, but so just for anybody who doesn't know, who might be joining for the first time, we thought we'd take a quick second to introduce ourselves. We are St. Mark's United Methodist Church in Raleigh, and I'm off camera because I'm wearing sweatpants and a sweatshirt because I went home and walked my dog.
Just fine.
I'm Pam, and I am on staff here. I am our office and facilities manager, but I kind of dabble in many areas.
Keeping us connected.
So, yes. And I will let LuAnn introduce herself.
LuAnn Charlton, pastor here for 2.5 years. And I'm glad to be with you tonight. This is, we say this every time, it's our favorite time of the week.
It is.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite things.
It is fun. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And we'll give folks a couple more minutes to join, but this is the fifth and final night of our spiritual disciplines study, which we did for Lent.
Mm-hmm.
And we are actually, Elizabeth Hatcher, who is another staff member, she is our children and families director, ministries director. Mm-hmm. Elizabeth and I are going to be running a 5-week book study on the Enneagram.
Yes.
We're going to use the book, The Road Back to You, and that's going to start the week of April 12th. And it's looking like it's going to be Wednesday nights at 7. We sent out an interest form, and most people said Wednesday at 7 worked best for them. So that's what we're leaning towards at this point. But we will be communicating information out about that on the website and through our newsletters. So if you're not subscribed to the newsletter, I would encourage you to do so. You can find the link to subscribe on our website, which is stmarksraleigh.org, and that's stmarksraleigh.org.
Yes.
So
I'm glad you clarified that. I had a hard time getting used to that at first.
The ST.
I kept spelling saint out.
Yeah, and it always looked weird to me.
It always, I did it over and over again.
It's just always been ST.
Yeah.
So
I finally got in it.
She did.
She
did. She's trainable.
I'm trainable.
Yes. All right. We've got a number of people with us.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Delighted that you're with us. And I'm going to say again as we start, please ask questions. Please tell your stories or offer your comments about just to say that you can go back and anything we've talked about through the weeks. It doesn't have to be specifically about tonight either. But the Lenten theme for St. Mark's for this year has been Inside Out Lent. So we've taken a look at going deeper inwardly and opening ourselves to God in ways that we may not have opened ourselves in the past. So that we could go outward into the world in, a more joyous way, a more effective way, a way that brings life to us as well as the people that we serve. And that's super important in today's world, that we go out in love. So I'm going to start tonight by inviting you just to center yourself, take some deep breaths. I bet your to-do list is very long, and you are right where you need to be right now. Right where you need to be. God's called us into this hour. So I want you to continue just to center yourself by taking the deep breaths. And if you need to, put your hands out, just symbolizing that you're letting go of anything that's keeping you from being fully here. I'm going to read Psalm 16, which is a song of trust and security in God. Psalm 16. Protect me, O God, for in you I take refuge. I say to the Lord, you are my Lord. I have no good apart from you. As for the holy ones in the land, they are the noble, in whom is all my delight. Those who choose another God multiply their sorrows. The Lord is my chosen portion and my cup. The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. I have a goodly heritage. I bless the Lord who gives me counsel. In the night also my heart instructs me. I keep the Lord always before me, because God is at my right hand. I shall not be moved. Therefore my heart is glad and my soul rejoices. My body also rests secure. You show me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy. In your right hand are pleasures forevermore. Amen. Love, love, love that psalm. And I wanted to pick up on a couple of lines from that. It says, in the night my heart instructs me. And that can be and is very often a direct result of practicing holy habits. Because we've talked many times that even if you don't feel some monumental shift, or you don't hear some, word from God in the moment that you're actually practicing, whatever that habit might be, that practice, it just builds. Each time you practice it, it builds your ability, builds our ability to hear God. So it's not uncommon at all to be awakened in the middle of the night, or hear a voice. It may not be an audible voice, although it could be, but it may not be, but the voice that comes deep within. So I just wanted to comment on that. And then also the psalmist speaking about my heart is glad and my soul rejoices. My body also rests secure. We got mind, body, spirit going on there. And it's an attitude and a place that we can live in when we practice holy habits. We live in a place that we can find gladness and we can find joy, and we feel secure. And I've said this over and over again, but Julian of Norwich, my favorite saying, all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. And that's where she's coming from. She had that deep connection with God. And so even though things happened all around her, and they happen all around us, as we've experienced for over a year now, collectively we've had a similar experience for over a year with our own unique parts of that and stories to tell. But even in the midst of that, our bodies feel secure. We feel a security. The first line of this psalm is, "O God, for in you I take refuge." So Psalms, I cannot recommend them enough to you. Just reading a psalm if you get into the holy habit of reading a psalm before you go to sleep at night, I can tell you that, I'll speak for myself, it has actually helped me sleep better. There have been times in my life where I could directly see the result of going to a psalm and reading it and letting those words sink in. So I commend Psalm 16 to you. So tonight we are rolling into to Palm Sunday, which is going to be a different Sunday. We're used to having the kids waving the palm branches and all that to heighten our celebration. But we know that will be this Sunday. We'll have Palm Sunday, and then we move into Holy Week. So one of the things that I'm hoping has spurred you through this time of our studies is that these holy habits do give us the courage to walk into and through the difficult times. So hopefully we'll be able to move through Holy Week in a very different place. Again, maybe your practice for Holy Week is reading a psalm before you go to bed. I'm not sure if what you've settled on. I'd love to hear some of that tonight, if you have settled on anything or if you have tried anything. But just being in that space of, I'm going to go all the way to the cross with Christ. The staff heard me say this earlier today. Easter does not make any sense without Good Friday. I mean, that whole idea that we just celebrate life and we celebrate resurrection. I mean, that is obviously quite wonderful, but if you take it out of the context of we worship a God who brings life out of death, that makes it so much richer. I mean, it's a completely different experience to think of a God that can do that which is not possible for us to do. It's not possible for us to bring into existence things that do not exist, but yet we worship a holy God who can. So It's powerful. It's very powerful. And again, thank you for being here through these studies. I'm going to move into the discipline of service. So if you have your study guide, there's some things there that'll be helpful, and then I'll be using a couple of other resources. Elizabeth Hatcher, which we've already mentioned, Pam mentioned her. She had our children's message this past Sunday was about service, the spiritual discipline of service. If you get a chance to look back on last week's service, it's a wonderful message. But I wanted to talk about it as we end our study now, because again, this idea of inside out. Inside out. We know that, the greatest commandment, we know what that is. Love God with everything we've got, and then love our neighbors as ourselves. So we need to talk about the spiritual discipline of service. I'm going to read from John chapter 13, which is the passage for Maundy Thursday. So I'm getting a little bit ahead of things. But I wanted to put some ideas into your head, little nuggets that you may think about when you approach Maundy Thursday and Holy Week. And of course, we're that night, recognizing Christ's sacrifice for us at the Last Supper and what was happening there. So I'm going to read this from the Message, and we'll use this to springboard the comments on service. Just before the Passover feast, Jesus knew that the time had come to leave this world to go to the Father. Having loved his dear companions, he continued to love them right to the end. It was supper time. The devil by now had Judas, son of Simon the Iscariot, firmly in his grip, all set for betrayal. Jesus knew that the Father had put him in complete charge of everything, that he came from God and was on his way back to God. So he got up from the supper table, set aside his robe, and put on an apron. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the feet of his disciples, drying them with his apron. When he got to Simon Peter, Peter said, "Master, you wash my feet?" Jesus answered, "You don't understand now what I'm doing, but it will be clear enough to you later." Peter persisted, "You're not going to wash my feet, ever." Jesus said, "If I don't..." "Master," said Peter, "not only my feet then. Wash my hands, wash my head." Jesus said, "If you've had a bath in the morning, you only need your feet washed now, and you're clean from head to toe. My concern is your holiness, not hygiene. So now you're clean." So, oh my gosh, so many. I could spend several hours. We could dissect this story, but for our purposes tonight, we know that this is a shocking gesture. We've heard it, we've read it, we've kind of lived with it, some of us our whole lives, but this is a shocking gesture for Jesus to take. Just like we do, humanity from the beginning has seen that there's certain jobs, there's certain things that are meant for those who are on a lower level. And washing someone's feet at that time would have been something that would be considered only for people who did not have power, for people who were weak, for people who did not have the resources. They were not born into the right family, didn't have the right positions, didn't hold the right positions in society, and so they would be the ones that wash the feet. So for Jesus, who again they had regarded as their Messiah, for Jesus to become the servant, he was in essence, in their eyes, becoming the one who was weak. Now we know that weakness was really the power. It was his power, and it was his understanding of who he was in God. It says here, the way it says in the Message is, let's see if I can find it. Jesus knew that the Father had put him in complete charge of everything, that he came from God and was on his way back to God. I love that line. I love that line in the Message, because guess what? It describes every one of us. We came from God. We are on our way back to God. And there's a period of time here when we live in this world where we have this incredible opportunity to grow in grace over time and again be transformed by God so that when people interact with us, they have interacted with one who knows how to be a servant, one who knows to put love into action. So this morning we did this passage. We didn't do a full Lectio Divina, but just had some moments with this passage during the staff meeting. And I asked Pam earlier to tell you tonight what came up for her this morning in staff meeting.
Yes, the part of the passage that really stood out to me was where Jesus began washing their feet and then he dried them with his apron. And it's such an act of service. And so much of what we do here as a part of the staff of the church is in service. One of my responsibilities is our facilities, and this is not a secret. LuAnn knows I do not love managing our facilities, and it's okay. I am happy.
I'm sure we can all understand.
One day things will change, but right now that is my responsibility, and I don't love doing it, but it is an act of love and an act of service because it is so important that this building, these buildings, are maintained well and cared for, and that our preschool is safe for the children. And so I really, as much as I don't love it, I still feel the responsibility and the service I'm providing to our congregation and our preschool children. And I love everybody that comes here. I love our congregation and being a part of it, and the fact that we have such a wonderful preschool. So I really just look at all of these aspects of my job. And there's parts of my jobs I love, don't get me wrong. I mean, the parts that I love are even more so an act of service for me because they fill me with joy, while I'm doing it. But it's all an act of service, and it's all comes from love.
Yes,
so.
And I love that. I love that you love, you see the love in that. But I mean, the lens, changing your lens.
Yes.
Changing your lens. I mean, what could be a dreaded task of every little, because you have to take care of every minute detail around here, but what could be a dreaded task can be turned around into living into the great commandment by changing your lens.
Yes. It's funny because years ago, before I was on staff here, I was our hospitality chair, and we kicked off the beginning of the year with a deep clean of the kitchen, and I was not excited about it because the former hospitality chair, the one that was rolling off, she organized it. And I was talking to my cousin, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do this, And she said, oh, but it'll be such fun fellowship. And it really shifted my perspective of not just the fellowship, but then also this is the kitchen that we have, and let's make it the best that we can, and make it good for our members here and for hospitality. And it does changing the lens that you look through really, really can be a dramatic difference.
Yes, it can.
Yeah.
So today, some other staff members brought up the whole idea that we need to be filled. We need to let Jesus wash our feet because we can't give all the time without receiving. I mean, we need to receive so that we can fully give. And this whole idea where Jesus said, if I don't wash you, you can't be part of what I'm doing. I mean, that was another point too, that, we can get out into the world and serve. I mean, there are lots and lots and lots of people in the world who do not say that they're a follower of Christ that do good deeds in the world. So we know that. We know that it's not a prerequisite for doing a good deed is not to be a follower of Christ. But we also realize, again, talking about a lens, that we have a different lens. We may end up with the same result. We may do the same gesture of good, but our lens is for people to see God, for people to know God and see God through Christ-like activity. So if you look at the handout there for tonight, when we talk about the spiritual discipline of service, borrowing from some of John Wesley's preaching, the founder of Methodism, Christians are those who love and serve God with their head, their heart, and their hands. So all of it's involved together. Adam Hamilton, who visited here at St. Mark's yesterday, I'll tell you more about that later. But he's a United Methodist pastor at Church of the Resurrection, which was a very, very large church in Methodism. Several years ago, he wrote the book Leading Beyond the Walls, and he said, one never exhausts all of the possibilities for growing and serving in Christ. Christianity provides an inexhaustible array of studies to explore and ministries to pursue. It never gets old. It never gets static. The needs of the world change. Again, we've seen that up close and personal in the past year. Our needs change, the needs of the world, we grow. So there's always a place to be involved with the things of God. I'm going to break that down with the head and the heart and the community, and with our hands for just a moment. I won't go into reading everything that's on the sheet, but to love God with our head is to have a solid understanding of what we believe and why. And we talked a couple of weeks ago about reading the Bible informationally, what it's like to do that. So that would be using our intellect to gain the history that we need, the context we need, to answer the questions that we need to answer, that we need to be informed, thinking people. So that's using our heads to live a committed Christian life. Then to love and serve God with our heart is to cultivate a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And John Wesley spoke about holiness of heart, or he called it being perfected in love. Which is what we believe, that we're sanctified. We're in this place of sanctifying grace after we say, yes, I want to be a follower of Christ, and then we're moving to become more perfect in love. So, we are cultivating. I would add, we're not only cultivating a personal relationship with Christ, but out of that is changed relationships with one another. But our heart is very much involved. So, early Methodism. The first, way before that was even called Methodist, John Wesley's understanding of holiness of heart, again, is exactly what the St. Mark's Lent has been about, inside out. It comes first, holiness of heart, your own individual heart. And one of the things that I have found interesting as a pastor through the years, and of course interesting in my own life too, but I am surprised at how many times we cannot see what's going on in our own lives. I mean, we pinpoint it in others. We point the finger, look what that person's doing, or we can see this. But we have a hard time going into our own hearts to look at what's not holy in there. But for us to live out in the world, this God and this understanding of God of love, God of forgiveness, this grace that we're called to put out in the world, this is a non-negotiable. We got to do the holiness of heart. We got to look in our hearts. And again, that's what we've been talking about with these different spiritual disciplines. Practicing them allows us to see what is not right, so that with God's help, and I should say on all this, I mean, the primary actor in all this, of course, is God. I mean, God's grace is poured out on us. God's understanding is poured out on us. We open ourselves, and then God gives us the ability to understand with our head and with our heart. And then lastly, finally, loving God with our hands, which is what service is, always translates into loving our neighbors. It is using our time and talents in Christian service. This includes living in community with others by being involved with the needs of hurting people, giving away a portion of our resources to share with others, ministering both within and outside of the church to demonstrate the love of Christ to others. And that's what Wesley would call social holiness. So out of my personal holiness, the work that I'm doing, we're not going to make it to perfection, most of us, but the work we're doing to become more perfected in love, then we will see a rise in our desire to reach out to other people and to spread social holiness. Again, we can do good without any of that. But if our understanding is that we have this incredible calling on our lives to share God, then the social holiness takes on a different take. We having anything?
Well, we have a couple comments. But
Okay.
I was going to say that tending the holiness in your heart, I mean, it's almost like putting your mask on the airplane first.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
really have to take care of yourself or you can't
Yeah.
take care of others.
That's true. That's true.
Barb Young said tonight was her favorite night also.
Oh, I love it.
Ann Barnes said that she loved Psalm 16 as well.
Wonderful.
And then Ann Barnes also said Adam Hamilton. Oh my goodness, how wonderful.
Yes.
So
I guess I should explain
it's
that.
not quite what you think, Ann.
So it's no secret to some that I've had a crush on Adam Hamilton for, 20 years now? Whatever. Of course, he doesn't know I'm alive. So yesterday was my birthday, and Pam and other staff members got together and put Adam Hamilton everywhere in the building. He was out in the parking lot when I drove up. He was at the front door. He was at my desk. He was everywhere all day, and he had lovely things to say to me. So if you ever drop by when the church doors do open, come. I'm going to leave them on my office door so that you can read the wonderful things that Adam said to me yesterday.
Yes. And you had lunch with him?
I had lunch with him. It was
Yes.
very touching.
We made a little stand-up Adam to sit with LuAnn at lunchtime.
He did. He asked me if the seat beside me was taken.
Yes.
So it was wonderful.
It was really fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Yes.
So anyway, yes. I love it when y'all comment. That's awesome. So on the second page of the handout for tonight, I just, and again, these are things that you know, but just looking at them again, where does ministry happen? Sometimes we're like, oh gosh, life is too busy. Things are too crazy. I'm in a season of my life. I've got young children, or I've got older parents to take care of, or whatever it might be, anywhere in between. I do not have time to do ministry. I do not have time to help other people. Well, yeah, we actually do. Because, number one, ministry can happen in our daily activity. Now, most of us recognize that that's the hardest place to do ministry of all. I mean, those that live with you and know you in ways that other people don't know, and the most stressful situations can take place in the home. But there again, that's why we're asking God, change us on the inside. Give us the ability to respond to our friends, our spouse, our child, whoever it might be, our neighbor, in ways that bring life to the other person. I've been very conscious during this whole pandemic and before that, but especially during the pandemic, of the power of words to just trash people and tear people down. I mean, goodness gracious. We may want to do that as human beings. You get that moment where you just want to say what's in you to the other person, whatever it might be. But that's where, letting Christ form us changes us, or at least, we're able to say things in ways that don't destroy another human being. And I know that's not anyone's intent. So ministry happens in daily activities. It happens through new initiatives. Good gracious. I mean, there's been an initiative popping up everywhere during the pandemic, different ways that we can help people in the church, people outside the church, our neighbors. And we've tried to address those things. And sometimes it can feel like you're emptying the Atlantic Ocean with a teaspoon. I get that. But just doing what you can, the little thing you can, taking the action that you can, it will change us to do that. We can do ministry, obviously, through groups and institutions. And I want to say, too, that, people will say to me, oh, I tithe, I give some of my money, I'm just going to pick an organization. I give some of my money to the Red Cross, but the Red Cross is not specifically, Christian. So, I don't think that, we would not be growing in grace and growing in love if we hung out only with Christians. We did, if an organization is doing good in the world, such as the Red Cross, then that's a place we need to participate and support. So, we do that as a disciple of Christ, in the spirit of Christ. It's an example of Jesus that inspires us. But I know, and some people can take issue with that. Usually when I say things like that, I get some pushback on that. But I don't feel like we were meant to live in a bubble and not participate in the world. So anyway, and then obviously through the church we do ministry. So there's different places for ministry to happen. This book that I've mentioned before, I'm bringing it back out because it's my fave, about spiritual discipline, Celebration of Discipline by Richard Foster. This isn't, they have an audio book too and a Kindle book, I believe. So anyway, it's a good read, but I want to read just a little bit about what he writes. Remember, he's a Quaker pastor, about the discipline of service. And this is interesting to me. He's going back to that John 13 story about Jesus washing feet. He says, the towel is the sign of service. When Jesus gathered his disciples for the Last Supper, they were having trouble deciding who was the greatest. Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? This was no new issue for them. Does that not say it all? Luke 9 says, an argument arose among them as to which of them was the greatest. Wow. Yeah, we're there. Whenever there's trouble over who is the greatest, there's trouble over who is the least. That is the crux of the matter for us, isn't it? Most of us know we will never be the greatest, but just don't let us be the least. I'm going to read a little bit more of it. Gathered at the Passover feast, the disciples were keenly aware that someone needed to wash the other's feet. The problem was that the only people who washed feet were the least. So there they sat, feet caked with dirt. It was such a sore point that they were not even going to talk about it. No one wanted to be considered the least. Then Jesus took a towel and a basin and redefined greatness. Oh my gosh, I love that. Jesus redefined greatness. Having lived out servanthood before them, he called them to a way of service. He goes on to say, in service, and this is where this coincides with Lent, so good for us to be talking about it tonight, but in service, we must experience the many little deaths of going beyond ourselves. Service banishes us to the mundane, the ordinary, the trivial. I mean, we're allowing ourselves, when we serve again through this attitude of being a follower of Jesus Christ, we're allowing God to direct us. And it may not be the place we want to go. Like Pam was talking about, facilities is not what she wants to do. But yet there is joy in that, and knowing that she's changing people's lives through doing that. So, God calls us in a way that we would not choose that direction if we were choosing on our own. But yet, it is the one that will bring us the greatest joy. I want to take a few moments to talk a little bit about a section of this chapter where he talks about self-righteous service versus true service. And I want to say thank you for hanging with me during Lent, because it's not hard. It's not easy to talk about these things. So thank you for hanging in there through this. He says, and these are just some of the characteristics of self-righteous service versus true service. Self-righteous service comes through human effort. Again, if I were left to my own to decide on what I wanted to serve, then we would do as the disciples. We would choose that which seemed to make us the greatest. And so the things that, were considered the lowest, we're not going to be picking those things. We would be calculating to get the service that would put us, on the top. He says self-righteous service is impressed with the big deal. So it's the big deal we go to. It is concerned to make impressive gains. It enjoys serving, especially when the service is titanic. Are you kidding me? I love that. People rarely, it takes some time, again, allowing God to direct us to realize that it's acts of service that are done when nobody knows it but you and the other person and God. Those are some of the most incredible moments you'll ever have in your life. Self-righteous service is highly concerned about results. Again, a difference in following God is saying, you know what, I'm not going to get caught up in what the ultimate result of this is going to be or how it's going to take place. I'm going to do the next step with God. I'm going to do the next step, move into service deeper, and then each step trusting and knowing that God has a bigger plan by that. He says self-righteous service is affected by our moods and our whims. It can serve only when there is a feeling to serve. And he says even Christians will use the terminology, I was moved by the Spirit. And then we may say at other times, well, I wasn't feeling the Spirit. I mean, I've heard that I don't know how many times. But he says, true service ministers simply and faithfully because there's a need. You know, we rise up because there's a need. Now, I know one thing that people say to me a lot is there's a lot of fear with that because they feel like if they get involved in a situation where they begin to address another person's need or another community's need, that the need is just going to grow greater and greater. It's going to be like they're going to ask of me things I can't deliver. So I know that causes hesitancy in people. It has for me in the past also, but it goes back to an issue of trust again, you know, and also, you know, if things do get to a point where we cannot meet whatever needs there are, then for us to speak truthfully about that. I mean, we're going to meet the needs we can. That happens to us all the time as a church. People come to us a lot here at St. Mark's, a lot. And so we can say to them, here's what I can do for you. These things I can't. Let me help you find a person or direct you. But it wouldn't make sense for us to say, well, I'm not going to help you with anything since I can't help you with all of it. He also talks about self-righteous service actually fracturing a community. In the final analysis, once all the religious trappings are removed, it centers in the glorification of the individual. Therefore, it puts others into its debt and becomes one of the most subtle and destructive forms of manipulation known. I mean, he doesn't mince any words with this. So again, you know, the term absolute power corrupts absolutely. I mean, there again, we need to keep doing the inside work because our ego's got to be in the right place for us not to get puffed up about serving. And I'll just say to you, that can happen pretty quickly. I mean, I've seen it happen quickly. I've experienced it in my own life where you get a lot of accolades for something that you've done, some, you know, big public thing that people know about in service. It feels great. It feels great. But if that's what I'm doing it for, then you know, I'm missing the whole point of service. And not only am I missing the whole point of service, I'm missing this incredible opportunity for God to form within me something that I cannot form within myself. For God to bring into my life teaching that I need to know. I've never, and I know you've got stories out there, so share them. I've never been in a position of service that I did not learn something about myself through that, good or bad. Mm-hmm. It's been both good or bad. But so that's really important too. It's just to say, you know, I can control this whole thing. I can decide what I will and will not do and who I'm going to be present for and who I'm not going to be present for. Or I can say, you know what? I serve a God that is so much greater than my small-mindedness, and because of that, I'm going to ask God to show me who to serve because in infinite intelligence will know the reason why I need to serve that person in that place. So I hope that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. My allergies are getting me.
I think, oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought. I was going to say something.
So I'm not the only one with COVID brain.
No, but I've never had COVID. I know what I was going to say. So you mentioned Elizabeth's children's sermon from Sunday, mm-hmm. and I loved it. I love Elizabeth's children's sermon. Sometimes I feel like she's talking to me, but
I know she's talking to all of us.
But she challenged the kids to go out this week and find an act of service, and she said, and it can be something comfortable for you. You know, that's familiar to you or, you know, with someone that you're familiar with.
Yes.
But then she said, and I also challenge you to find an act of service that makes you uncomfortable.
Wasn't that awesome? Yes.
I loved it. I mean, what a sweet way to stretch your wings.
Yeah.
You know, and a sweet message for the kids. She said, "Oh, shucks."
You go, Elizabeth.
But I love that because she made it sound so easy. Like start out with something familiar, and then she threw that challenge in there, and it made me think. I mean, it was like, oh,
yeah,
gosh, it is easy for me to do the acts of service that are familiar to me. But what if I did stretch my wings a little bit?
That's right.
Yeah.
And what I loved about that too is I just went, oh my gosh, she's planting the seeds with them for them to understand that, look at what's right in front of you.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes, we will do big acts of service in our lives for God. So I mean to say, put a big X on that and never do anything that's big and publicly known. That's not where I'm going with it. Those things are appropriate and God calls us into those things and those things happen. But if we have that mindset that going out and servicing the world has to be, I'm going to a mission trip to X country or whatever I want to do, then we lose the everyday that's right in front of us.
Yes.
So we're dropping opportunities left and right.
Yeah. I'm a firm believer in community.
Yeah.
And that's where you have a big influence, a big opportunity. I mean, it's just like voting, it's important to vote in a national election, but it's even more important to vote in your local election because that's where your vote has a much bigger impact. But even within your community, whether it's your children's school or your church community or your neighborhood, that's where you have an opportunity to make a difference. It's like being in the center of a ripple, and if you can be that center of the ripple in your community, it can make a difference.
And I want to make sure I say this before our time is up, because I want to make sure that I get this in. Not everything is going to have your name on it. As a friend of mine says, she asked, does this have my name on it? When people ask her, because she's a person of service and people ask her a lot to serve on other things. There are going to be times when you have service fatigue. You have compassion fatigue. Some psychologists call that. So, to do this in a healthy way, doesn't it make all the sense in the world to let God guide us? Because if God's guiding us, the answer will not be yes to everything. I mean, we'll know when it's not time for us to do that. And if you want to take joy out of service, then say yes to everything everybody asks you to do. I remember, and I think I've shared this story before, so please forgive me, but this was 30 years ago, where a pastor asked me, I was new to the congregation, and he asked me to be the secretary for the administrative board. It was administrative board at the time. You cannot ask a worse person to be secretary of anything than me. It's just not in my wheelhouse with my spiritual gifts, and it ain't in there. But I thought, okay, you can't say no to the pastor. I've got to do this. It was a miserable year. And it was not good for the church. I mean, I would cringe if I looked back on the minutes that I turned in for that year. God bless that church. But it took all the joy out of it because it was not directed by God. It was not honoring my spiritual gifts. In fact, it was going against my spiritual gifts. Now that goes back to what Pam was just recalling that Elizabeth was telling us, or setting up for the kids. I mean, there are some ways that you will feel uncomfortable when you're stepping out of your comfort zone. So I don't think it's wrong to try sometimes to do things that you haven't tried before. But at the same time, I knew clearly. I knew when I said yes that it was not going to be a joyful thing for me, and that I was not going to do it well. I mean, it just wasn't my wasn't my calling.
There's a difference in stepping out into something of discomfort and knowing your strengths.
Definitely.
And I mean, if you know yourself well enough to know something is not your strength, that may not be the right discomfort to step into.
It was a miserable year, and I was supposed to serve 3 years, and I begged the guy to let me out of it after the first year. So, which he was gracious enough to do too, because maybe he saw my misery. I don't know. But so I say that just to say that one of the byproducts of service that God has called us into is joy. I mean, that's a huge byproduct. Joy, a huge blessing of it, but not better than byproduct. But a blessing is joy. So if the joy is not there, I personally, start by praying, God, what did I see? What's going on? How am I to deal with? Is this something that you're trying to form me through doing this? Or is this something that I jumped into and took onto my plate at a time when it wasn't right. And the other thing I want to say is that, and I've mentioned this, you live it every day. The fatigue that we feel through this pandemic is a real issue. And I've talked with people that, they just want to have a break from everything. And so I fully understand that too. And so I think there's a balance in that. And I think we have to balance this taking care of ourselves so that we can be used for God's purposes in the world. When we let that go, as Pam brought up at the beginning, if I don't put on my own, mask before I get everybody, or on the seatbelt before I get everybody else into their seatbelt, then that's not going to be a move towards health. It's not going to be a move towards personal holiness at all. So keep that in mind and know when, you need to be fed, you need to be nourished, when it needs to be poured, when the love of Jesus, the grace of Christ needs to be poured into you, and ask for it. Ask for it, ask for it, ask for it. You've heard me say before, I believe everybody should be in counseling. Whatever form that take, there needs to be somebody that you can talk to and that you can ask about it, so that you can be, filled when you're feeling very fatigued. So this isn't a guilt lesson tonight, like there's something wrong with you if you're not serving. But it is an invitation to, be honest about where you are right now during this past year. What's happening with your spirit, your body, your mind, your spirit. And I say that to say that again, if I believe that the invitation to service is one that makes us whole. So if we're only living lives that are all about ourselves, then we're never going to be whole. It's just, and it goes against the teachings of the world, but we're not going to find the wholeness. But that doesn't mean that we don't need a break, that we don't have times when we need to receive instead of give. And I have known those times personally, and I have made mistakes by continuing to try to serve when I was really dry, or when I was just, not able to do so. Speak the truth. Speak the truth. If you're serving with somebody and you're in a project and it's too much for you, say, right now I have got to take care of myself today, or whatever it might be. The truth always is better.
Yeah. I was asked one time to lead children's Sunday school, and that is not my gift or area of service. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know that. So I started, and it did not take me long to realize I did not enjoy it at all. So I went to the person who had asked me to serve there, and I said, I can continue doing this until you can find someone to replace me, but this is not a good fit for me.
I like that.
And it worked out. I rolled off, and I think that's when I started doing hospitality, which is far more up my alley. So.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting too, because you brought up a good point that and I've obviously given my life to the church, but the church can be the worst place for wearing people out. I mean, just zapping the energy out of them.
Well, it's easy to ask the same people that step up.
Yeah. So even if it means saying no at times, or whatever the situation, I would rather hear a no answer by somebody who's being led by God instead of a yes answer by somebody like me who's just trying to please that pastor. The last scripture that I have listed on your study guide, just want to read the very last line of that, or the last couple of lines. This is from 1 Peter 1. I'm on to the Message today, so it's from the Message again. As obedient children, let yourselves be pulled into a way of life shaped by God's life, a life energetic and blazing with holiness. God said, I am holy, you be holy. I love that everything we've talked about all through Lent is about letting ourselves be pulled into a way of life shaped by God's light. And then the fact that he adds a life energetic and blazing with holiness. I mean, that's where the passion is. That's where the energy comes from. That's where the I've said it many times tonight, but that's where the joy is. It's right there.
Yes.
So thank you for joining us. You are a gift, and I'm excited about the study that Pam and Elizabeth are going to be doing with the Enneagram. I recommend that highly to you. The Enneagram is a very powerful tool, more powerful than any other personality type instrument that I've ever been part of using. So I recommend that to you. And I will be doing another study. I'm trying to decide between three things. I'm trying to let God shape me on that, instead of just the one that I want to do. So there's the three things that I'm working through. So I'll do something down the line too.
Yeah, the Enneagram one is going to be by Zoom.
Yes. Okay.
So that it can be a lot more interactive
Yeah.
with discussion.
Good.
So yeah.
Good. Well, blessings on every one of you. Thanks for hanging with us for Lent. We'll have virtual services on Monday, Thursday, and Good Friday. And we have 3 worship services on Easter Sunday, 6:30 for sunrise service. We've changed our 8:30 to 9 o'clock to give you 30 minutes extra sleep. And then we have an 11 o'clock. So we have spaces for people to sign up.
Yes, we because of Governor Cooper's changes, his executive order yesterday, we are able to add some more spaces to our service. So there are some new openings at the 11 o'clock.
Yes.
Which was full. So if that's
Yes.
what you wanted, then go
come
check
on.
out the sign up. And links are on the website if you go to the announcements section.
Yes, thank you. So we'd love to have you join us. If not with us, then blessings on wherever you worship on Easter. May you have the courage to travel all the way through Holy Week so that you can enjoy and celebrate the resurrection fully on Easter Sunday. So, see you
Thank you
soon.
all.
Thank
Have a good
you.
night.